Hello, hi. Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 4131. Today's date is 1st of June, 1st of July 2000. Okay, 1st of July 2026. It's been almost like a morning at 7:03 a.m. 7:03 a.m. Yeah. The weather is a kind of like a really pleasant. Like I don't know. It's a kind of like a very cloudy with the morning with little bit of breeze. Okay. Um. Basically, is this thing na ki I am talking in English, but there are so many kind of like flaws in me that I am talking in English like a I don't know couple of words. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing or the meaning of that word. Like I know the meaning, but okay. So हल्की हल्की हवाएं चल रही है. Okay, so basically is this thing हवाएं means wind. So like a small wind is a kind of like a wrong answer. Okay, or wrong word. Okay, instead of you have to say a breeze. A breeze would be kind of like a says that ki a kind of like a halki halki hawai. But I don't know that. Okay, I was kind of like a say a small wind. Okay, another thing is that ki wet. Okay, yeah. So basically, in the rain, I got wet. So that is a completely wrong sentence. Okay, yeah. It was that ki in the rain I got soak. Okay, so soak means like a soak in water. Yeah, not wet in water. Like let's just say I am wet. All right. Okay, yeah. I have to be kind of like this artifact is a kind of like a really very important. I have to be take the decision. Okay. Three decision by the way. So let's talk about that. Okay, it's not a kind of like a question, but like there are a couple of things like I'm actually building my application and I am kind of like a stuck at three things and I wanted to discuss before that. Okay. Uh, okay, let's talk about that. Okay, the question is not question premium feature in application that user can able to be pay, share button and private comment. These are kind of like a something that key three things that I wanted to talk about today. First of all, what exactly is this three things and what exactly that and that? Let's understand the context. Okay. I wanted to build an application called My Artifact. What exactly is this application? When you write the diary every single time, you cannot able to be write the diary the way that you wanted to. The reason is that your thought process is actually much more faster than your writing speed. Your writing speed is actually slow is because of you need a pen, you need a paper, you need a convenience, and even after that you need to put lot of amount of effort to print your thoughts. And that's why almost no one is kind of like a somebody writing a diary, nothing really at all. So what if instead of writing a diary, what if we could record a diary, like a audio record a diary? Okay, the stuff that you are kind of like assembly listening right now is my audio diary. I called it My Artifact. My Artifact episode number 4131. I am doing this thing for past 11 year. I am doing this thing every single day. It adds so much amount of value inside of me. The person that I'm became today and the person that I will become tomorrow, it is all because of Artifact. Why? Because of writing a diary is a self-reflection process. So as a kind of like a recording a diary or recording an artifact is also kind of like a self-reflection process. And because of this thing, it adds so much amount of value inside of me. I wanted to share this value. I wanted to share this process, this technicality, this kind of like some stuff. How do I supposed to share that thing? While by building an application. My application is somewhat something like a YouTube platform that key in a YouTube you kind of like upload your video, other people kind of like sees the video. Same thing, you kind of like record your artifact, upload your artifact in artifact platform, other people kind of like listen your artifact. Okay. uh, Before, and there is only one catch, is that your privacy is always kept hidden. Before I wanted to build this application, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences, specifically worst possible consequences. So I went to ChatGPT. I tell my idea and also tell him that he suggests me at least like a hundreds of worst possible consequences in question. ChatGPT kind of like a suggests me those 100 worst possible question, and this is one of those question. By the way, this is not a question, but it's a kind of like a things that associate with that thing. All right. Now let's talk about step by step what exactly is this thing. The first is that premium feature in application that user might gonna pay. Okay. So do you want to add any kind of like a premium feature that user wants to pay, like a basically YouTube premium or Spotify premium, that the user is kind of like a paying money to the Spotify, to the YouTube, so that they would kind of like a access, like they would kind of like access the content ad free. Okay. In my application, yes, there is advertisement. Okay. So basically if I kind of like enable the premium feature, then probably is this thing that key, like basically there is no advertisement, right? Then I also earn the money, and kind of like a somebody user will also kind of like a somebody getting the ad free content, right? So like do you wanted to kind of like implement the premium feature? Well, at the beginning, no, I don't want to add any kind of like a premium feature, nothing really at all. Why is because of that key, uh like not right now, at least like I'm actually building, I need to understand the kind of like a sample size of my audience and what they think, and that then I will kind of like add the premium feature. Right now I don't want. But there is a only one thing that I really required to kind of like assembly ask money from user. Why? If the user is a kind of like a very celebrity kind of like a user, okay, and celebrity kind of like a user means like, let's just say a Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, Shah Rukh Khan is not a kind of like a things that he would kind of like record the artifact, but for the example sake of example, let's just say a Shah Rukh Khan. Oh yeah. So a Shah Rukh Khan is a kind of like a celebrity, and his voice is kind of like a recognized by millions of Indians. So if he record the artifact, even if he didn't really mention any kind of like a name, people will kind of like somebody realize or recognize that this is a Shah Rukh Khan voice and things like that and that. Oh yeah, privacy might get compromised. So in that situation, I have a feature that your voice is actually cloned by AI voice. Okay, yeah, you have to kind of like enable the AI clone voice, and basically on your layer, it's top of the AI clone voice, so that you are kind of like a somebody your voice is kind of like a somebody that key have a kind of like a protection layer, so that other people will not gonna recognize, because other people are kind of like a seeing this AI clone voice. Now building this AI clone voice, it's a very expensive, by the way. Okay, why? Because of that I need to kind of like a simply like a basically audio kind of like a AI voice cloner, like a 11 labs and things and that to kind of like a merge with them, and kind of like a making sure that kind of like a somebody, because it's not a kind of like a couple of kind of like a things. When the people who kind of like a record the artifact, they will kind of talk shit regarding about almost like a half an hour. So experience should supposed to be smooth. The voice quality should supposed to be kind of like a as good as possible. Kind of like a say, feel like that key, it should supposed to be take a pause according to the human, like that. So kind of like a somebody add the voice clone, AI voice clone on the real voice clone. It's very expensive to do this thing, and for that particular feature I need a money from the user. If the user wants that kind of like a somebody voice clone for their artifact, then probably is this thing they have to be kind of like a pay some sort of amount of money, so that I would kind of like a do this thing, so that I would kind of like a do this thing. Because if I kind of like a try to do this thing by myself, I can't do this thing, I can't afford like that, at least at the beginning. Because of that ki AI voice cloning is a kind of like a much more expensive, like literally very expensive. Expensive means what? Like basically you just have to kind of like clone the voice, right? Now, why is not that expensive? Well, basically is this, you are thinking from one artifact point of perspective. What if there is a millions of artifact? Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing, if there is a kind of like a millions of artifact and I have to voice clone, processing takes even more time too. So that is a lot of thing is actually happened. So basically it's this thing I cannot able to be kind of like a give this feature for free because I can't afford them. Okay, I need a kind of like a somebody, if they want that thing, then probably is this thing having a premium feature would be kind of like a much more better, so that I would kind of like give the AI voice cloning and as well as the ad free content, which is also kind of like a really good. So this is kind of like a very premium feature that I might gonna think that user might gonna pay. Okay, so this is a kind of like a thing. Okay, now let's talk about the question number two. Okay, question number two is that, yeah, share button. Okay, yeah, like this is a kind of like a very confusing and very, like last night I was kind of like a thinking about that, like what exactly happened. Yesterday I record artifact and yesterday I kind of like a talk about the share button things. Okay, yeah, and yesterday I was kind of like a mention that I did not want any kind of like a share button, but then I realized that it's not. Okay, yeah, because of that na like like having a share button and not having a share button, let's understand pros and cons. Okay, like having a share button, what might gonna add value in your in your app, or having a share button, what kind of like a disadvantage value, pros and cons. Okay, yeah. So let's just say a kind of like a particular user who kind of like a record the artifact. Okay, now basically that user can share his own artifact. Can that user share his own artifact? Well, basically is this saying that na ki I could able to do one thing na. Okay, okay, yeah, let's like basically okay, just kind of like a stuff. Okay, let's just understand stuff. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's just say a kind of like a I was kind of like a listening a artifact. Okay, and there is a kind of like a particular person artifact who's a kind of like a talking about something that I really resonate. Okay, yeah, let's just say badminton. Okay, a particular person who's actually talking about the badminton, that key how much kind of like a effort it really required and things and that and that and that. It's not kind of like giving a tutorial, it's a audio platform. Tutorial is kind of like a nothing really at all, but it's a kind of like a sharing the emotion regarding about how is exactly his badminton journey. Now I am a kind of like a badminton player, or I am like I am kind of like interesting in badminton. Okay, and because of this kind of like a somebody artifact is a kind of like a really resonate me a lot. Now I also know my kind of like a badminton friend. Okay, yeah, and I also wanted to share this artifact to them. Because of that they will also resonate with the kind of like a whatever that particular person say and things and that and that. So do I able to be share this artifact or not? And if I share, then what would gonna happen? If I have the share button and if I share this artifact to my friend, like a basically like let's just share button and say this thing, dude, listen this artifact. This is artifact is really good. It's kind of like a mention regarding about badminton and stuff. My friend is a kind of like a listen that kind of like a listen that artifact. Or let's just say is this thing that my friend doesn't really have artifact app. So basically is this thing that na ki if he wanted to listen that artifact, he has to be download the artifact na. He has to download the artifact, do the kind of like a sign in process, then he could kind of like a listen those artifacts, right? So basically from that context, what exactly is this thing? A friend kind of like a share the thoughts that both our person resonate with, like a badminton. Okay, this particular person talking about the badminton, I resonate, my friend resonate, I share this artifact. So basically is this thing, we are both sharing because we are a kind of like a friends and things and that in WhatsApp maybe. Okay, we kind of like sharing this artifact through the WhatsApp. Now basically what exactly happened in company's point of perspective, I get another user. Okay, who's kind of like not able to use the artifact right now because of this kind of like a share button. He kind of like get the link, and from that link he has to be download the application, do the sign in process, and then kind of like listen the artifact and things and that. So basically is this thing that it add value in company, because of this thing the company get new user, right? The one user who doesn't really have artifact, he kind of like get the new user. So basically share buttons are kind of like a really good. Okay, because it not only kind of like a somebody helping the community to kind of like a share the kind of like a things and that, but also kind of like a basically for the company's point of perspective, that company is kind of like a somebody is this thing that key like a basically automatically I get the user without even try anything at all. So this must be kind of like a really good having a share button, right? But there is also another thing that I wanted to talk about, that like this is a kind of like a pro. Okay, let's talk about the cons. Okay, the cons is that let's just say a kind of like a particular person who kind of like somebody listen an artifact. Okay, and he realized that this artifact is belong to a kind of like a particular person that he might gonna know because of her voice and things. Like let's just say this particular person doesn't really mention, let's just say a particular person talk record the artifact regarding about something whatever. Okay, now B person knows A person personally. Okay, uh, A person record the artifact, and somehow B person kind of like that artifact is actually recommend to the B person. Now B person actually recognize that this is a person because of the voice and things and that. A person does not really mention any kind of like a name, but B person kind of like a recognize the voice and things and that. Okay, so basically what that kind of like a B person will can do, B person will kind of like a share the button. Okay, click the share button, send this artifact whatever the A person recorded, share the kind of like a artifact to her and say, is this your artifact? So because of this thing, the privacy get compromised, right? But dude, the privacy does not get compromised by the share button. The privacy get compromised by the A artifact is kind of like a recommend to the B artifact. Okay, even if that B particular person doesn't really share the artifact to A person, B person already knows that A, this artifact belongs to her. So the privacy does not compromise by the share button, the privacy get compromised by the recommendation perspective. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of like a something very kind of like a thing. So what do I supposed to do that? That's a kind of like a things. Okay, so basically is this thing that I have to be make sure. Okay, yeah, that like basically every social media platform are kind of like a meant to be share on their surrounding. Okay, yeah, like a basically surrounding first, like on the local area and things and that. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is a kind of like a doing the same thing. But artifact is a kind of like a something I'm kind of like a using, maybe kind of using, like I don't really created the recommendation structure, recommendation architecture. How does kind of like artifact will recommend to people? I don't really have that structure. But I was actually thinking that probably is this thing that I shouldn't supposed to be kind of like somebody share the artifact to the normal locality. Why? Because of that privacy might get compromised. But dude, yeah, like basically is this thing that if the people who are kind of like sharing the artifact and they are not kind of like something that can recommend to the locally surrounding, then it doesn't really make sense at all, na? Okay, let me kind of like explain this thing. Okay, yeah. In Instagram platform, you kind of like open up the Instagram and you might found that a kind of like somebody, even if you don't really follow any kind of like account and things and that, still kind of like Instagram is kind of like a recommending such a kind of like a profile which is kind of like a you already knew it or maybe in your familiarized. Like basically Instagram take the kind of like information regarding about location, and from that locality point of perspective, Instagram is kind of like a recommending couple of kind of like somebody the profiles and kind of like a feed and things and that. Okay, to kind of like somebody enhance the kind of like somebody to understand what is actually happening in locality and things and that. Same thing happened with the YouTube. But these are kind of like somebody audio and visual point of perspective. Artifact is not. Artifact like basically is this thing this is kind of like a one thing that I have to understand. Artifact is not a content. Artifact is not a kind of like a thing is that kind of like somebody what actually happened in the background and what actually happened in the surrounding and things and that. No. Artifact is a kind of like a things that what actually happened inside of you. What actually happened inside of you, your thoughts and things and that. Okay, yeah. And these are very secretive. Okay, like yeah, it literally secretive. When you write the diary, it's a kind of like a thing that when you write the diary, you are making sure that write the diary, no one kind of like a somebody read and things and that. Same thing goes with the artifact. Artifact is a kind of like a somewhat something audio diary. People are kind of like a sharing this thing, and you are not wanted to read that diary, the particular person that you know, but you are comfortable to kind of like um, give your diary to someone that you might not know, or maybe kind of like a particular person who are kind of like a really really far away from you. Example is this thing. The like This is, maybe I'm wrong, but what I kind of like only realize, the deep connection or deep conversation, okay, or maybe kind of like somebody is this thing that key, the person that we already knew it, we are literally hesitate to do the deep connection. Why? Because of that key, like why is that? Okay, let me, okay, I am kind of like a completely wrong, but let's just say a kind of like a completely stuff. Okay, a girl who is a kind of like a fall in love with a particular boy. Okay, yeah. Now this is a kind of like a secret information for her point of perspective. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that key, this kind of like information that is a secret for her. Okay, she will kind of like a, who is the person that she will kind of like a share this information to someone, who is that particular person? Possibly the friend. Okay, because friend is a kind of like a particular person who is a kind of like a, that she will kind of like a share that key, I like this boy. Okay, like she kind of like a mention to her friend, because friend is a kind of like a very kind of like a very kind of like a different. She will not gonna say to her brother or her sister. Why? Because of that she's very close. Okay, yeah, she's very close. She will not gonna kind of like a share this information that I fall in love with this particular boy. No, she will kind of like a chose to share the information to her girlfriend, to her friend. Okay, yeah, that key, I love this boy and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So do you understand? Basically, it's this thing that regarding about the information, we are love to share the information with a stranger instead of known person. Okay. So basically, it's this thing that artifact is a kind of like a should supposed to follow the same architecture, because of the artifact is a kind of like a sharing the own thoughts and things and that and that. And basically, it's this thing that if you are kind of like a sharing these thoughts, you are making sure that you are kind of like a sharing this thought with such a person that you might not know, or kind of like a things and that and that. Okay, so basically is this thing, like I have to be do the same thing, like basically let's just say a kind of like a one particular person, let's just say a one particular person who's actually from, let's just say Maharashtra, let's just say Nagpur. Okay, yeah. And particular person who kind of like simply record the artifact. So in that context, okay, in that context, basically is this thing that key, like in demographic point of perspective, where should I supposed to be share her artifact, where should I supposed to be recommend her artifact, basically in the Maharashtra region, na? Right? But I have to be understand another thing too. What is exactly that? Let's just say a particular person who kind of like a record an artifact in regional language, let's just say a kind of like a Marathi. Okay, yeah. Obviously I would not gonna share her artifact to the Canada or US or Europe or things like that and that. Why? Because those people does not really understand Marathi. Okay, yeah. So in that context, okay, yeah, I am kind of like a very forceful to kind of like share her artifact in Maharashtra region, not her locality, but kind of like in the Maharashtra region and things and that, right? So kind of like making sure that whatever the like people who kind of like listen her artifact are, those people are stranger, not a known person, because kind of like a privacy might get compromised, right? Yeah, this is kind of like a things I have to be do, kind of like a recommend your artifact to outside the location. That's why I'm kind of like a collecting the location information from the user, because if I know the kind of like a artifact where it kind of like a belong, let's just say a kind of like a artifact is a kind of like a uploaded from Nagpur, Maharashtra. So basically I should supposed to be, and this particular user is kind of like a recording artifact in Marathi language, so I should supposed to be recommend her artifact in Maharashtra but beside Nagpur. Okay, yeah, beside Nagpur, so that other person not gonna know, and also with the Marathi language and things, or Marathi language understand audience and things and that. Okay, yeah. But if you are speaking in English language, then this is kind of like a really good advantage for you, because of that if you speak English language, if you're recording artifact in English language, then I have a kind of like unlock the door in all around the planet. Like I would kind of like share or recommend your artifact to the kind of like some US, Europe, New Zealand, to Canada. Yeah, I could able to be share all around the planet, because the English audience are actually far more than kind of like a regional language kind of like a thing. So yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the share button. Yeah, like this is kind of like a recommended architecture. I talk about that, but still the share button. Okay, yeah. Do I want to add a share button or not? Well, basically, is this thing that na ki like what is actually con for kind of like a sorry not have a share button? Like what? Okay, what exactly is this? What exactly is this thing that ki what exactly is this thing that ki yeah? If I not have a share button, then privacy will not gonna get compromised. Like basically this will not gonna happen. Like basically is this thing that ki kind of like a the stuff that I talk instead of kind of like a things. Let's just say a kind of like a not have a share button, right? In the first place, so that user might not gonna share the artifact and things like that. Is that right? But that is not the kind of like a real approach. Like a basically share button is not a kind of like a somebody compromise the privacy. No, it's a kind of like a somebody depends on the kind of like a recommendation. It depends on kind recommendation architecture. It depends on kind of like a somebody that key the user kind of like a what that particular person mentioned things and that. So probably in that context might be. So I was actually thinking that ki I have to add the share button. Okay, yeah, because probably is this thing that na ki I was actually thinking that ki not to have a share button, because let me tell you one thing. There is a one thing that I specifically eliminated. What is really that? Search button. In my application, I don't really have a search button. Means you cannot able to be search a specific user. Nothing really at all. You can't do that big, because if you do this thing, then privacy got compromised. Okay, why does kind of like a search button get compromised? Like basically is this thing, if you already knew the particular person and you also might gonna know her kind of like a username, then you might gonna kind of like a somebody and you know that particular person in real life too, then basically is this thing that you will kind of like a stalk her in the artifact by kind of like a search and things and that. But dude, like a basically is this thing, you okay, you don't have search button, but you have a kind of like a save button. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing, the particular person who is a kind of like a stalking, who kind of like a save her artifact. Okay, yeah. And it is for far more easier for him to kind of like a simply navigate to her profile picture, like a basically click on her profile picture and kind of like a see the whatever the artifact that she kind of like a record, and he was kind of like a stalking her, right? And kind of like a yeah. Well, basically is this thing that na ki I do not have share button. Sorry, I do not have search button. Is not because of that. Is because of that ki probably privacy compromise actually happened from externally. Okay, about what? How? Let's just say is this thing that ki I found a kind of like a Shah Rukh Khan profile. Okay, yeah, and Shah Rukh Khan username. Now basically is this thing, what I would gonna do, I would kind of like a somebody go to the kind of like a somebody is this thing my WhatsApp and kind of like a say to my friend, dude, I found the Shah Rukh Khan artifact profile, this is the username. Okay, yeah. Now other people who are kind of like a my friend, they are kind of like open up the artifact and they have search button, so they would kind of like a search specifically the username of Shah Rukh Khan and they would kind of like a listen and things and that. So basically is this thing, privacy might get compromised. Okay, yeah. Obviously is this thing, if the Shah Rukh Khan knows that the privacy get compromised, he have kind of like a feature that he would kind of like a change the username so that this might not gonna happen. But still is this thing that na ki that search button is a kind of like a somebody is this thing that ki you are specifically searching about specific user. Okay, and why are you kind of like a searching for specific user? Because you might gonna know that particular user and things and that. So that is completely wrong thing, because it's not a kind of like a YouTube or Instagram that kind of like a somebody that he search about Mr. Beast and watch the Mr. Beast video, search about the kind of like a something influencer and kind of like a watch her content and things like that. It's not about that. Okay, yeah. So I am kind of like a completely eliminating the search feature. Okay, like you cannot able to be search a kind of like a user or any kind of like a stuff. Okay, yeah. But share button I have to be include, because the share button is not kind of like a somebody compromise the privacy, but it kind of like a somebody is this thing that he enhance my application visibility in more and more people. Okay, I think that. So probably is this thing that key I would have that search share button. Okay, because share button is a kind of like a really good. But also one thing is that na ki I have to make sure that ki you can able to be share artifact, other people artifact. You cannot able to be share your artifact. Okay, because if you can share your own artifact, then that's a like basically you want to compromise your privacy, and app is kind of like a try to deny that thing. Okay, yeah. So you cannot able to be share your artifact, but you can share other people artifact. This would be kind of like a much more better way to kind of like a maintain the kind of like a things that key, like a search share button kind of like a use it like a good. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that might be kind of like a really good, like you can have a kind of like a share other people artifact, but you cannot able to be share your own artifact. No, you can't do that thing. Okay, and this is a kind of like a something that key architecture might be something really good. Okay, yeah. Now let's talk about the another feature. Okay, yeah, that is a private comment. Okay, yeah. I was actually kind of like a building right now. I'm building this application, and I am actually kind of like simply building the comment section. Okay, yeah, how is the comment section actually things and that. Then I'm kind of like a designing this thing, and basically is this thing that ChatGPT kind of like a recommend me a private comment. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing. Let me tell you the architecture regarding about the comment. How does the comment is actually kind of like enable? Okay, first of all is that I was actually thinking that he probably a kind of like a audio comment would be kind of like a much more better, but probably audio comment is not. Why? Because it takes a lot of amount of processing and kind of like a lot of, yeah, like I can't do this thing. Okay, at least in the beginning I can't do this thing. So basically a comment should supposed to be a kind of like simply comment, but I have to be think about multiple point of perspective. What is at least this thing? Toxicity. Toxicity is actually share in comment section much more. Why? Because of that people are kind of like a, yeah, why does people are kind of like a sharing the toxicity is because of that they can. Okay, and art and comment section actually allow them to do. Usually people are kind of like a giving the comment before even kind of like a reading the entire content or understand the entire content. There are so many users are kind of like a somebody uh, kind of like a commenting the YouTube and Instagram without even kind of like a listen the entire kind of like a what that particular person say and things and that and that. Before even listen the entire content, people are kind of like a sharing the comment, and that is a kind of like basically in the YouTube and Instagram it is fine over there. Okay, because the structure that created is actually kind of like a designed by the kind of like a people who are kind of like a think about the like basically the content creation actually happened through multiple process in the YouTube, in Instagram. But artifact does not. Artifact is a raw, unfiltered. The way that I'm stuff that I'm saying is a printed literally. Okay, yeah. So if I'm talking shit, people will kind of like a somebody kind of like a bully her in the comment section and things and that, right? And this is higher chances it actually happened because artifact is a kind of like a somebody that he like a basically just a raw, unfiltered. Okay. So basically what I was kind of like a thinking that na he, let's just say a kind of like a design the comment section in such a way that kind of like somebody reduce the kind of like a sort of toxicity, but have the comment section. How do I do that? By like the comment section is actually available, but you cannot able to be click it. Okay, yeah, it's a disable. You cannot able to click it. You have to be listen 95% of artifact. If you listen the 95% of artifact, then and only then that comment button is actually enabled, and then you click it and then you comment. You cannot able to be comment before the 95% of kind of like the artifact that you haven't really read. You cannot able to do the comment. So because of this thing, toxicity will kind of like somebody gone. Okay, because people who are kind of like doing the toxicity, they are kind of like very much fast and things they want quickly. Okay, yeah. Because of this delay, so basically people are kind of like not giving that much toxicity, and the people who are kind of like listen the entire artifact and then they are kind of like doing the comment, they are the really genuine people. Okay, yeah, and higher chances that they will not gonna kind of like share the toxicity. One thing. Okay, do you understand? This is the kind of context that key. The comment section is only and only enable after you listen the 95% of artifact. All right. Now basically I listen the entire artifact. Now comments are actually enable. Now I can able to do a comment. Now there is also another feature too in the comment. Okay, yeah. Basically it's saying you wanted to do a comment, but you wanted to private yourself. Okay, so what should you supposed to do is that key there is a checkbox that anonymous thing. Click on that anonymous and kind of like somebody do the comment. So when this thing actually pop up, it kind of like say anonymous person and your comment. That anonymous you cannot able to click it. That means you cannot go to that profile. So you can able to be do the comment anonymously. Okay, yeah, the particular person who kind of like a recording artifact doesn't really know who you are and things that doesn't really kind of like simply click on your kind of like a profile and things and that. So this is kind of like a really good feature, having a kind of like a checkbox that anonymous. Click on that anonymous, then probably the other people will not gonna kind of like find out who you are and what you are. Okay, this is a kind of like a really good feature. Okay, yeah. Another thing, okay, all those kind of like a comments, if the kind of like a people who are kind of like reading 95% and then they are commenting, the comment is actually publicly available. Okay, yeah, means if the people who kind of like listen and they click the comment, they kind of like listen the entire comment thing. Those are publicly. Now let's talk about the private comment. Okay, yeah, what's a private comment? So private comment is a kind of like a thing is that na ki basically is this thing that ki whatever the people who kind of like send a comment, send it privately, means like that it's not actually visible in private in the comment box. It's only visible to the kind of like a user who kind of like record the artifact. That is called private comment. I was actually thinking about that. Ki do I want this feature or not? Okay, yeah, because if I kind of like basically what exactly happened, I don't have DM feature, by the way. Okay, direct message feature, I don't really have it in my application, doesn't really have it because privacy might get compromised or maybe things and that. But another thing is that na ki let's just say a kind of like a particular person who's actually literally kind of like a really understand that particular person and he wanted to kind of like a wants to know and things and that and stuff like that. So private comment would be kind of like a much more better, like having that private comment feature is a kind of like that it act as a kind of like a direct message, right? So basically the conversation actually happened between the user and that particular person who record the artifact. It should supposed to be private. It's a kind of like act as a kind of like a direct message, right? This is kind of like I'm very much confused that should I supposed to be implement or not or things and that and my instinct are actually telling me not to do that. Why? If I knew that if the people, let's just people point of perspective, if the people have option that they could kind of like give comment privately, why they will kind of like give the comment publicly? Okay, yeah, it's not because of this thing that like basically I have this anonymous checkbox. If I have this anonymous checkbox, then probably I'm kind of like securing my profile as well as kind of like the user might gonna know what I'm kind of like talking about things and that. Private comment is kind of like a thing is that na ki it doesn't really make sense at all. If you kind of like click in the private comment, then why you have anonymous checkbox? Oh yeah, anonymous checkbox. And if the private comment is act as a kind of like a DM, then probably it's not a right thing, right? They might gonna talk about something that ki probably like they will gonna talk about what's your name, my name is this, where you are from, I'm from India, what's your mobile phone, okay, I have this mobile phone. Yeah, basically having a kind of like a public is a kind of like a simply is this thing that na ki user might not gonna share the kind of like a internal detail, but having a private comment would be kind of like a sharing people information like where you are from, what is at least this thing, what is your name, your mobile number and things and that and yeah, that is a kind of like assembly that key privacy might get compromised or things and that. But dude, what's wrong in that thing? Like basically if the people who are kind of like sharing that information, literally they are wanted that they want to share the information, who do you decide that you or don't want to do this thing? Like if the user A and user B are kind of like doing the private comment, they are sharing the internal information and things and that, what's wrong in that thing? Well, there is no wrong, and it is also really good too. It's not really wrong, but the problem is that na ki let's just say a kind of like a hypothetical scenario. Okay, yeah. A kind of like let's just say person A, person B. Okay, let's just say person A is a girl, person B is a boy. Okay, yeah. Now girl is a kind of like a record the artifact regarding about something. B person kind of like they both know they both doesn't really know anyone. Okay, let's just say this particular person actually from Chandigarh, this particular person actually from let's just say kind of like a somebody that New York. Oh yeah, completely far away from each other and things and that. The girl is kind of like a talking, she's kind of like a recording artifact in English. She kind of like a talk about something that the boy who's actually from New York kind of like a resonate her. Okay, yeah. Now that boy is a kind of like a comment on her. Okay, yeah, on private comment, and in that private comment they are kind of like a talking about something. It's kind of like a act as a DM. Okay, so in that DM they are kind of like sharing the information, where you are from, what is your mobile number, what's your WhatsApp number, and things and that. They are kind of like basically okay, this not actually happened directly, it's actually happened like that. Ki um a boy, sorry, girl is a kind of like a record the artifact. B person is a kind of, the boy is a kind of like a doing the comment on her artifact, private comment. Now this girl is a kind of like a somebody is that, who is that particular person? She click on her profile, she found out this boy profile, and this girl is a kind of like a listening this boy's artifact, and this girl is a kind of like a somebody resonate or kind of like a liking that whatever that boy is kind of like a recorded in artifact, as well as the kind of like a somebody, that boy is also kind of like a listening her artifact, so he's also kind of like a, their kind of like a thoughts and vibes are matched. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that boy is a kind of like a do the kind of like a private comment, it act as a DM, hi hello, and she's also kind of like a say hi hello and things and that. Things get accelerated, your name, number, where you are from, it personal detail actually share, mobile number actually share. Then basically is this thing, this boy actually call this girl. Oh yeah. And this girl is also calling this boy. Okay, yeah. No, relationship start. Okay, actual relationship start, because they are calling and things might be they are kind of like a physically they meet somewhere and things and that. She is from Chandigarh, he's from New York and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly happened in some sort of scenario? Basically is this thing that probably this boy is a kind of like a, like their relationship does not really kind of like a survive that much amount of time, or maybe something happened. So basically in that situation, he do have a kind of like a somebody that feature regarding about her. So probably he still listen, but you have a block feature na, like a basically if their kind of like a relationship actually broke, then probably that particular girl will kind of like a block him, or that boy kind of like a block her, so problem might gonna solve, right? Yeah, but the problem is that now the problem is actually solved, right? But I was actually thinking about that now, why does that problem actually started? Okay, yeah. To kind of like a having this kind of like a private comment button. Okay, yeah. And because of this, everything actually started from this private comment button. My only main purpose of kind of like having the artifact is the kind of like a things that na ki kind of like a somebody is this thing that ki, like, okay, let me tell you one thing. If I enable the private comment button, what will gonna happen? People will kind of like a somebody find the particular person, their soulmate or things in an artifact, instead of kind of like a rely on real life and things and that. Why does people will gonna do this thing? Because artifact is a kind of like a platform where people are kind of like a listening other people thoughts and things, and they will resonate the particular guy and things and that. Okay, yeah. So basically from that context, this is completely wrong, right? Like, I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing, but my instinct or every possible thoughts are kind of like telling me that I do not have this private comment button, because this private comment button is a completely kind of like a, not only kind of like a compromise the privacy, but as well as kind of like a somebody is listening people thoughts and things, because artifact is a kind of like a have a lot of authority to change the entire ecosystem of what does people think and do and stuff like that. It's not a kind of like a typical YouTube, it's not typical kind of like a Instagram. It's an artifact, it directly went inside your head, it shape your thought process. Having a private comment is, I think that na ki I would not do that thing. Probably is this thing, it would be kind of like a much more better. Okay, yeah, to kind of like make sure that ki, yeah, basically. And also is this thing na, in the comment section, it has a lot of filter. Like you cannot do a comment like a basically the way that you want to do. You have to listen the artifact. After you listen the artifact, then you kind of like do the comment. Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing, in this thing you have a private comment. If you have a comment and you know that you could do private comment, why does people will kind of like do the public comment? They will not gonna do the public comment, they will kind of like do the private comment. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so like basically it's this thing that probably having that comment architecture is a kind of like a fail because of having a private comment. So that's why I don't really think that I should supposed to be use the private comment feature. Like I have to be no, I have just a comment with anonymous. You can click the anonymous name, you can click the anonymous. If you want your privacy should supposed to be compromised, click on the anonymous, do the comment. then your privacy will compromise. Other people will not gonna know your profile. They will not able to be click your profile because there is an anonymous user. Private comment is a like, I don't really think that I should supposed to be added. Alright, this is a kind of like a feature. Like basically this, I need a kind of like a clarity. I was kind of like a thinking about all night regarding about like, should I supposed to have the share button, should I supposed to have private comment and things and that. But then I realized that no, I don't. I like basically from this artifact I'm kind of like very much clear regarding about what do I supposed to do now. Yeah. But private comment is a kind of like a really good feature. Okay. But I don't want it. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not. Like basically this thing na ki maybe I will kind of like add the private comment feature, but I have to be kind of like a think about that. Like this kind of like a decision I shouldn't supposed to be take alone, because I need to understand all the multiple consequences. When I will have a team, I will kind of like talk to them and kind of like somebody that he probably take their opinion what is actually things and that. Probably this would be kind of like a much more better, because if I kind of like say this thing to the user, like let's just say, do I enable the private comment feature? Then every user might gonna say, yeah, private comment and things. It acts as a kind of like a direct messages and things and that. But like user is a kind of like a really excited for kind of like a somebody what is actually things that better right now. User are not actually thinking about the future point of perspective. If I'm kind of like I have to be, if I'm taking their responsibility as a privacy, I have to maintain their privacy for long term point of perspective. Okay, so yeah, and my instinct or everything is kind of like a telling me not to have this private comment feature. Yeah. All right, this is it. Thank you.